Hey there, let's learn together about the latest tools for blazing fast, fully editable content pages with seamless Git-based content management. All right, well, welcome to this month's user group. We're going to be talking about Next.js and Git-based CMSs and using open source high performance tools for great content management. I've broken this talk down into a few different aspects in terms of how I approach web projects and how we're doing it internally. So I'm looking at the tools. We're going to look at Next.js to start off with. Then we're going to look at Tailwind because you need to write CSS and you're better off leveraging a great framework. We're going to look at some different UI components. So the choices out there, what works for us, what's working for our projects. Then we're going to look at TinaCMS. It's a Git-based open source headless CMS. And then I'm going to wrap it all up in a demo and we'll get to see the different bits and pieces working together. So I'm Matt Wicks. You can find me on GitHub and LinkedIn there, and there's some random facts about me. The other thing is, here at SSW, we've got a rewards app. You can get some merch and swag and like free tickets for things. You just need to scan codes to earn points. And at the end of the talk, there's a feedback form. If you fill that out, you'll get a bunch of points for that. All right, let's kick off with Next.js. Show of hands from the audience. Who here uses Next.js? Shit. So we got almost 100% of the audience, which is great. So why would you use Next.js? Well, for starters, it's a full stack React framework. So separate to this, I help run the Angular superpowers for SSW. And when we compare Angular and React, we make the distinction that React is like, it's a UI library. It's not a full framework. Next.js is a meta framework and it puts itself in league with Angular. So you're able to do things more than just the UI. There's routing, there's a whole bunch of things, and it's an opinionated framework. So it takes an opinion on how things should be done. As a result, you get things like built-in performance optimizations and an excellent developer experience. So when I jump from project to project, I can look at the app directory for the app router, and I can tell what params are being passed in and whatnot because there's a structure to it. It's not like using some other routers where it's configured. There's a convention involved here. The other thing is it supports a whole bunch of other things with routing. So you can have API routes and you can have middleware interacting as requests come in. And you can also do SSR, SSG, and ISR. And that was a lot of TLAs, and I don't know if you know what they all mean. So let's take a step back and let's just unpack those. Cool. So I've got these little sequence diagrams here, and hopefully it'll make more sense. So this is SSR, server-side rendering. And when you do SSR, you may run a build, or you may not. So if you think about classic ASP and PHP, there'd be SSRs. It falls into that category. You deploy an app to a server, and then a browser would come, make a request to that server. So it's like, hey, give me this page. And that server may go, oh, I need to go call a database, so I'll go fetch some data. Eventually the data will come back. And then I'll write a whole bunch of HTML, and I'll pass that back to the browser. So you've got the server rendering the HTML and sending it to the browser. The next one is static site generation, which is quite popular. And in this case, you've got a build, and there's a loop that happens. So for all the pages it thinks it needs to work at, it goes, and if it needs to fetch the data, it'll do that. At build time, it'll then generate a whole bunch of static HTML files, and once it's done, it will then go and push that to the server. Then when a browser comes and requests a page off the server, it just goes, oh, well, I've got that file on disk here. Here you go. And returns it pretty quick. So this is awesome, but it's obviously got some shortcomings because if you have to do any data fetching, it's all done at build time. So there's a bit of a delay happening there. Finally, we've got ISR, incremental static regeneration. This is a little bit more complex, but we've got a for loop up here doing a very similar thing to what we had on SSW for when we're doing static site generation. But then when we upload the static HTML, we also include some revalidation logic. And that may be, hey, this page has a time to live of an hour. So if that page is good for an hour. After that, it's stale. So when the browser comes and requests a page, the server goes, hey, is that page still, has it gone past its use by date? Yes, it has. Okay, well, I better get fresh data. And then I'll rebuild that. I'll chuck that in a cache, and I'll return the file to the browser. So it has a different version. If it's not stale, hey, I can just grab it out of the cache and return it there. So if we look at this in a flowchart, if you better understand flowcharts, we've got our build process at the top. And then when the browser requests a page, there's just a simple if check, and it'll either revalidate the content if it's stale, or it'll just return the content straight away. Straightforward. So SSR, SSG, ISR, so now you know. Now, SSR, you want to use that for highly volatile data, so data that could change. It may just be invoices or something like that, where there's maybe a separate process or like an account balance, because that may have changes and you want it to be live. SSG, stuff that doesn't change, so static things. So if you have a 404 page, you'd prefer that to be static because odds are you're not going to put, the latest photos of something on there. You'd most probably have it static or something like that. And finally, ISR. And it kind of comes down to the it depends category. So you get the benefits of both, and you can tweak it to whatever you need to. I guess the short and long of it is that Next allows you to pick and mix, and you could choose that the some content is SSR, some is static, some is ISR. You can pick a mix, and you choose the right pattern for what works for that use case. Cool. So now that you're all up to speed on that, let's drill a little bit into Next.js and look at the stats behind it. So I've just pulled up here the state of JS for 2024, and we've got this nice blue line sitting above everyone else, and it keeps on crawling up, and then it kind of plateaus. But essentially, that's Next.js, and it's kind of dwarfing everyone else in terms of usage. So it's a highly used framework, so it is very mainstream. Next.js supports JavaScript and TypeScript, so I thought that this stuff was important.
Yeah, Matt.
Go back.
Which one's shrinking?
So which one's shrinking? That's a good question. I think it's the pink has definitely dropped down, and that looks like that's Gatsby.
Yeah.
Gatsby's definitely shrinking because it's I'm not sure what the state is with that. It's definitely hasn't had a lot of commits lately, apart from some dependent bot stuff last time I checked. Hugo's shrinking as well. It's a little hard to tell off that, but yeah, there's a green that's teal. I'm not sure. Docusaurus. It looks like it's, or something else is coming up above it. Anyway, Next.js is definitely very mainstream. In terms of JavaScript, TypeScript usage, you can clearly see that the lion's share is definitely in this bottom quadrant, this bottom area here, which is, if we say that that's the 50% line, this is going to be, 60, 70% plus TypeScript usage. And that is, if I do the math in my head, that's over 70% of the users surveyed. So a lot of users are using TypeScript. It's great that you get the choice in Next, and you can use either. In terms of application patterns and how things are developed, single page applications, definitely the highest at 90%. Then we've got the server-side rendering and static site generation following up onwards. So these are the patterns that we saw early on. So SSR and SSG. ISR is at number 8, 9%. It's not as highly up there, but you can opt into that and use it when you need to. Switching over to the Stack Overflow survey for 2024, we can see React is the highest UI framework at 39.5%, and followed along by jQuery, which we'll just skip over that because we don't need to do jQuery right now. We don't have to. But Next.js is the next one there. So in terms of a full framework, it's the highest one. So Next.js shipped a new version late last year. let's have a look and see what's new in Next 15. So we get React 19 support, which is awesome. That went stable in 15.1 because they wanted to wait for React itself to go stable. And that only works in the app router. So there's two different routers in Next.js, app router and pages router. The app router is the newer one, and it's where they're investing more into, especially since the pages router doesn't have React 19 support. If you are using the pages router, you're stuck with React 18, which supports, you can use React 18 on both app and pages router. You also get the React compiler, which is really cool. That's something that's it's experimental, but it's included as part of React 19, and it allows you to it writes better JavaScript for you. So when you're using your components, you don't need to worry about the use memo hook. It will compile down to the right thing and follow the rules of hooks properly. So that's experimental, so that's coming soon. That's a talk in itself, so I won't go that deep into it. The thing that I quite like the most is the hydration error improvements. So if you don't know what hydration is, it's in order to speed up the delivery of a web page, the server will send the static HTML first, and then it'll send the SPA app that follows it. So this is what's called the client pages, the client router. And there's a bit of a cutover that happens where it looks at the browser renders the static HTML, it then has all the JavaScript, and it plugs in all the state into there, and then it swaps so that you switch from static HTML to the JavaScript app. And in that process, you can have situations where the HTML is not the same. Now, when that happens, you get this lovely error screen. So hydration failed because the initial UI does not match what was rendered on the server. So what the server rendered, that static HTML, doesn't match what the browser rendered. And it's super useful because the HTML expected to contain a matching P and div. Where's the P and where's the div? So for a while, you were expected to play Where's Waldo with this and try and find where the error was. But in Next 15, they've kind of spoilt it for you because they put in this really lovely explanation about common reasons why this would have happened. So things like use date.now or math.random somewhere on the page. And obviously the server and the client generated different things there. And it'll even tell you, hey, look, in this P tag, class name paragraph, there was meant to be some server text, and it wasn't there. So all those Where's Waldo fans kind of miss out on bug hunting for this. There are some breaking changes in Next 15. So we've got the request APIs have gone async. So in this situation, we've got a component admin panel, and it calls the cookie store and gets a cookie called token out of there. So this is Next 14. In Next 15, that component needs to be an async function, and you need to await cookies. Now, this is really important because it enables Next to do partial static rendering. So the bits that it needs to wait on, to get headers, or it gets other bits of information. It can await that, and while it's awaiting that, it'll render out some static things along the side. So you can parallel rendering. Now, it's a breaking change for a lot of things. So anywhere we use cookies, headers, there's a thing called draft mode, which references cookies. Params, so this is how do you structure your route, the segments in your URL, and search params, so stuff in the query string. So that's going to be a lot of code to change. But don't worry, there's a code mod that you can run, npx at next/codemod @ next async request API. It'll scan your code base and it will try and correct what it can. And most of the time it works really well. So quick run of a code mod and you can clean up all those things. Another thing that was a breaking change was caching semantics. So this affects any get route handlers or the client route handler, and also fetch requests that are made inside components. So Next 14 used to cache by default in these scenarios. So cache wasn't opt-in, it was opt-out, which is a little bit of an unexpected behavior. So they fixed that in 15, and they changed that to not cached by default. So this can quite easily catch you off guard. We did a blog post on this on the TinaCMS blog because we saw that with some of the products that we were working on, and we just wanted to put it out there so that people were aware in case they didn't read the changelogs. So there's a cool post about it in terms of what you can do to mitigate those issues. TurboPack has been in the works for a while for Next, and in version 15, it's starting to come to life. So if you don't know what TurboPack is, it's a Rust-based incremental builder. Think of it like a high-speed train, whereas Webpack is like a freight train. And if you've ever waited at a level rail crossing for a freight train to go past, you know that they take a long time to go past. Whereas a high-speed train just goes, phew, done. So this is definitely the case with TurboPack. When you are using TurboPack, you get 5 times faster cold starts, 10 times faster refreshes, and since it's incremental, the deltas are very small. So this is enabled by default for development, and Vercel have also created a cool page called arewetурboyet.com. Now, development is a resounding yes. They've only got one failing unit test there, but it's enabled by default on all new Next 15 projects. Production is not yet ready. They've got 99.3% tests passing. So there's only 56 tests left. So hopefully pretty soon they'll be able to stabilize that and enable that. Now, this is a huge deal because it uses Rust, which means you get parallel processing, whereas Webpack was using JavaScript to do stuff. With parallel processing, you're able to throw more cores at your build server. So if you have a build server with a lot of cores, building a large monorepo project with Next, if you have something like 30 cores, they think that it's going to be 83% faster than building with Webpack. So you're going to get much more use out of your build servers. And faster builds are always good. Question:
Have you seen or heard of any performance improvement?
Have I seen or heard? Have I seen or heard of any performance improvements in this? No, since it's not. They don't even say it's beta for production. They say it's don't do it yet. They're pretty close, but you don't want to hit one of those edge cases. So once it does go live, it's going to be big. In terms of just a local dev experience, it's like chalk and cheese in terms of performance. So that's already huge. Developer experience improvements in Next. We talked about the code mods already. I gave you a sample of that. There are a whole bunch of other code mods, so I'd check out the Next/code mod package. There's a whole bunch there. And in the documentation, that when there are code mods available, they do suggest using them. There's ESLint version 9 support, which is awesome because 8 had some vulnerabilities. I'm using Biome.js on our projects, but you can use ESLint as well. The other cool thing is TypeScript support in the Next config file. So in the Next config, you can have a JavaScript version, you can have a TypeScript version. If you use the TypeScript one, import the type, and you get IntelliSense and strong typing. So that's really cool. The other thing is we were talking a bit before about being able to pick and mix whether or not you're doing static or incremental or server-side. Well, you can modify that config file and get it to render, hey, this is a static route when you hit a page. And it'll actually render that in dev mode, which is really cool. It is available. There's a little Next indicator available, and you can get some more information about the page. But being able to see this is really awesome because you may be showing an account balance and it's static, and that may be a bit of a red flag if you see those two things together. So getting those in dev mode is awesome. Okay, so that's a bit of a catch up in terms of Next.js. Let's get up to date on Tailwind. Before I start, who here is using Tailwind in the room? It's about two-thirds.
I mean,
That's pretty good. Well, maybe I'll convince a third of you to switch over. So why would you want to use Tailwind? Well, it's a utility-first CSS framework. What do I mean by that? Instead of writing a big class that says, hey, this is an alert box, and you have a whole bunch of CSS properties in there, it makes your HTML look really clean. But if you use that alert box in multiple places and you make a change to the alert class, you then have a blast radius of where those changes could affect. So it could throw off a lot of things. Whereas if you have atomic classes where it's like, hey, I want the padding to be this, I want the font to be this, I want this to be this, your blast radius of change is very small and is usually confined to within the component you're working on. So if you make a change, you know it's going to be inside there. This allows also for rapid UI development and a very consistent design system. So your class names are, when you have numbers against them, they relate to sizes, and it's incredibly consistent. There's a strong community and ecosystem with this, and it integrates really well with a whole bunch of modern frameworks, including Next.js. And the other thing is it's very AI friendly. So if you want to use ChatGPT, Copilot, or V0, it'll spit out Tailwind classes till the cows come home and actually build up some stuff for you and make suggestions. So it's a lot easier to work with AI tools. What else is new? Well, there's this cool rendering engine called Oxide, and that's also written in Rust. And that's really important for a few reasons. The first one is that your builds get faster. And they've bundled in a whole bunch of stuff, so you have smaller package sizes and a unified tool chain in terms of how you import things, vendor prefixing, and how you transform syntax. So there's a whole bunch of changes on there, and there's a lot more. It's gone from a config file approach to a CSS first approach. You can still use your config files from Tailwind 3. They are backwards compatible, but CSS first is the way going forward. Since it's CSS first, you can have dynamic theming with CSS variables. So you can modify your CSS variables to affect what's happening in place. If you need to change a color and add opacity, there's a color mix that gets added in there as part of the new CSS specs. You can use container queries. And I think the best thing is that you don't need to configure it. Previously, you had to configure it and tell it, hey, look in these files to look for Tailwind usages so you can purge the stuff that I'm not using. Whereas the new system is kind of additive and only pulls in what's needed. So if we look at, here's a config file that would work in Tailwind 3, and it's a little hard to discover what's going on. You've got a theme that's being set. There's some screens. This will actually overwrite any screen sizes that were set before. There's some colors. That would overwrite the colors that were available. It's using hex codes, and there's an extend, which would extend the spacing and border radius. There's a whole bunch of things going on. It's really easy to stuff these up and put yourself down not a good path. Whereas in the new system, you've got your CSS file, you have an at theme container, and you define CSS variables to set things. It's a lot clearer. And if you notice, it's not using hex codes anymore. It's using this OKLCH. So what is that? Well, it's a change from the sRGB space to this OKLCH color space. Now that's from OK Labs, and it covers lightness, chroma, and hue. Is it safe to use? Well, as long as you're not on IE11. But if you're on IE11, odds are you've got bigger problems than a color space. But it's green pretty much across the board. Now, it's hard to describe why this is a big deal, so I thought a picture would be better. Depending on your screen, because different screens will render colors differently, if you look across this color spectrum, it goes red, and then it kind of goes this muddy color, and it looks like it's getting dark, and it comes up to green, and there's this big bright stripe here, and then it goes dark again, and then it comes to this big blue stripe. Everyone can see that? Yes? Awesome. Let's just zoom in case it's not as obvious. So if we transition, you can actually see the brightness sort of pulse on here. So it's inconsistent. This is really important for accessibility because it's harder to get contrast on different colors. You need to be very, very deliberate in your color choices. Whereas if you compare the RGB to OKLCH, which is at the bottom, it's very hard to tell where the colors change. They kind of blend into each other all the time, and it's a very consistent brightness as you go across the screen. So hopefully you can all see that. So what's great about this color space, this coloring system is it's describing colors as humans perceive them. You can programmatically generate a palette. And since it's got a predictable brightness, it's much better for accessibility. So it also supports wide gamut displays. So if you've got an HDR display or a P3 display, like the modern Macs, they've got really much wider colors, and it looks a lot nicer. And evenly distributed hues. So this is all leading up to a better experience as a user and seeing the colors. So the other thing I'd like to point out is that the colors are actually human readable. Now, with RGB, you're adding colors together. You're adding some red, you're adding some green, you're adding some blue. I don't know about you, but whenever I've mixed colors, it kind of turns a muddy brown or black. So it's really hard to work out what color is what. Whereas with this, you've got your lightness axis. So we're talking about, on a scale of 0 to 100, how much light there is. We then have the chroma, so how saturated. So that's this distance out here. Now, there's no upper bound on this. It starts at 0, and then it just goes out. But realistically, if you want to kind of match the RGB spectrum, you're looking at a maximum of 0.4, 0.6 if you're looking at a P3 display like a Mac. A wide gamut display would be up to 1, but they'd be quite an expensive monitor, so not a lot of people would have them, and it could go on forever. So maybe those Samsung AMOLED phones, maybe they're like a 2. I don't know. They seem to be highly saturated. And then the hue is actually the angle around the circle. So the hue will actually point you in terms of what color you're looking at. So that's the degree. If we want to, there's sites so you can convert from one color to another. So if you go to oklch.com, you can actually plug in. I've plugged in SSW red in there, and now we've got the OKLCH. So we don't need to remember CC4141 anymore. It's 0.58, 0.1757, and 24.55, which just rolls off the tongue really well. All right, everyone up to date on Tailwind?
Do you think it's going to be successful?
Do I think it's going to be successful? Well, it's the default. It is the default. It is the way to choose colors now. It's more consistent. You're able to okay. So one of the problems with color palettes has been you have to be really careful about which colors you choose because they needed to have the right contrast with every other color. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to read what's going on. And it's a big accessibility concern, but it's an art choosing those colors. This color system has gone from art to science. So you have predictable variations. So no, I won't go back there. But essentially, the difference between, I forget which color it is, but if you change the values by 10 on green and blue, they will actually have different effects. So it's very hard. Whereas if you use the LCH variant, you can actually predict what the visual difference will be, and it's a predictable differentiation between them. So it's easy to validate that you've got a safe color palette, and you can do it programmatically. Yes, other question?
Not question. On only LCH, only if you have a red color, and only your product owner says, hey, I need the brightness to be dialed down. We just dial down the brightness.
Yep. So if you
need to adjust with the parameters, and it's not obvious.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, a very valid point. If you were set on a certain color and you needed to dial it down the brightness or the saturation, either of those two things, instead of playing around with RGB and trying to work out what looks okay, you've actually got some easy sliders that you could adjust. Definitely. So yes, other question.
Do you think that designers or developers will like it?
Do I think who will like it?
To a quicker.
So who will transition to it quicker? That's a really good question. I would like to think that the designers are screaming for this because of the predictability, and it is very hard to choose a good color palette, and being able to to sort out some. You're able to sort out issues much earlier on with this system than others. And if you do need to then go and adjust the opacity and things like that, you can just plug these variables into a color mix and tweak them very, very easily. So I kind of think that both designers and once developers understand this, they'll both be screaming for it. Other question?
With examples of shapes, like in Tailwind, we most likely use a online calculator to generate your shades, your base color. While now you can easily.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So Tailwind 3, you had to apply a lot of tools to get different shades of colors, whereas in 4, it's an open game. Like when you choose your classes, you're not constrained by how many sizes you've got predefined. You just put in the right number and it extrapolates. So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. It's Tailwind 4 is a thing into itself. Like you usually think that, hey, it's a CSS framework. Oh, some pretty colors and stuff. Well, no, they've done a lot of research and it shows. So I think it's definitely the default going forward nowadays, or at least it should be. But let's move on to UI components, because these things will build on top of React and Tailwind, and allow you to create some really, really great experiences. So you can't talk about UI components nowadays without talking about ShadCN UI. It's become the de facto standard. It's an open source collection of some pre-built React components, and there's a lot of them. And a lot of it's based off Radix UI, which I believe was developed by WorkOS, so auth provider, pretty cool. It's not your traditional UI library. So back in my day, because I've been coding since before Git, so I feel really old. Lewis, you're very young. You don't know the joys of Visual Source Safe. And you're lucky for it. Anyway, back in that day, you used to pull in a UI library and it would have a whole bunch of opinionated settings, and you want to change it. Well, I need to apply some classes and change it, how it works, how it looks. And then when I use it again, I need to remember to apply those classes again. And it's a bit of a pain. And generally speaking, when you override, the settings, it breaks something else along the way. Not a fun day. With ShadCN, when you install like the ShadCN button, it may pull down a package that it's based off, but it'll apply an abstraction over top of it, and you control that abstraction. You own that code. So you customize it, and then when you reference it, it's exactly how you want it to look and feel. So if you want to tweak the functionality, go for it. I think it's really cool. And another thing is it's very AI friendly. So if you're using tools like V0, it'll spit out ShadCN stuff. Vercel own the UI or the sponsor or own the UI kit, but it's a de facto standard now. So there's the ShadCN page, and I'll just go to it because I think it's worth looking around. So it's flipped over to dark mode so that it switches in between. You've got a whole bunch of components here. So if I go to the components, we can see, hey, there's a thing about Tailwind 4, Next 15. There's a whole bunch of frameworks you can work with. And then there's a whole bunch of components. So one of my favorite ones is the Toast one, but it's not called Toast. And if I go down, it's called Sono. So this is an opinionated Toast component for React. And let's show the toast. That looks pretty good. What if there's multiple toasts? I don't know if you can see, but it's got all three, and they kind of stack, which is a really cool effect. So I quite like that. And then what's the code if I do need to use it? Well, I import toast, and then I call toast to toast up a toast. And that's pretty easy. So what if I want to install something like this? Well, there's a command that I run. So if we go back to the slides, if I do want to set up ShadCN on my project, I run a command to initialize ShadCN. It installs like a components.json and sets some defaults in there. So the next time it runs, it doesn't need to ask. I can then add something like a button, and then I can use the button. So I import it and I use it. And it looks pretty straightforward. What else does it do? Well, it adds in a component that I can take control of. And there's a lot of code here, but let's just look at the important bits. Variants. So we've got some variants here. I can say it's a default, a destructive, an outline. It's applying some classes in terms of, hey, this is a background primary, background destructive, things like this. And I can set these classes and say, hey, look, when the primary color is blah, the destructive color is blah. Tailwind will then create, hey, there's a text color called primary, there's a background color called primary, and set those all up for me. Then when I add more ShadCN components, they'll use the same class names and it'll all look consistent. So it's really easy to get a very consistent UI interface with this. I'm in full control over this, so if this button doesn't work exactly how I want, I can always tweak it. So I've got a lot of cool functionality there. The other one that I like is 21st.dev. So this is an awesome aggregator site. So it has it aggregates a whole bunch of these components that are similar to ShadCN. And if I go down, I'll most probably find quite a cool one. So we've got, hey, there's a whole bunch of features, AI chat components. So if I want to add AI chat to my website, I'll most probably go and say, hey, that looks pretty cool. I'll click on that. What does it look like? It'll give me a preview where I can see what's happening. And all right, I like that. How do I use it? Well, I've got all the code ready to go. So this is pretty cool. Anyone going to use this next time they need a component? Check out 21st. Yep, all of you? Awesome. The one site that I check, which is on 21st, but I check this site first, is magicui.design. Now, I quite like this one. They do, it's another component library. They do a whole bunch of really cool components. And so here's a marquee that has some, looks like testimonials going across. If we want to have a bento grid, we've got a bento grid. There's a whole bunch of, animations and things happening inside. And when I hover over, it feels alive. It's quite vibrant. I can open it in V0 and start to work with it, or I can just grab the code and run from there. And it's got it's even using ShadCN to install things there. So definitely have a look at this. I've been checking it out and recommending it to people to add components to their site for that. Another one that I just want to call out, there's a solo dev. I don't know how to pronounce his name. But it's nsui.irung.me. It's his personal site. He puts up a whole bunch of things that kind of look like ShadCN, but they're really good for landing pages, and they're quite clean. So I really like his work. So I just wanted to shout out there to him. Now, there's a whole bunch of UI components, and hopefully you can use those on your projects coming up. Let's just switch gears and go to look at CMS. So I'm going to talk about TinaCMS. I'm the product owner for TinaCMS, and obviously I quite like it. So it's an open source Git-backed headless CMS. So you store markdown JSON files in your Git repository. You own the data, you own the content. You model it the way you want to model it. So there's a config file, and you can say, hey, this markdown file is going to be structured this way. So now I have typed results coming out of my markdown file. You can integrate with GitHub via Tina Cloud. And if you need to, let's say you've got a documentation site, you've got some documentation on your product and you want to put it embedded inside your application, and maybe your app is a mobile app, you can use the GraphQL API to grab that documentation, pull it out of TinaCloud and shove it into your mobile app. So you have one source of truth and you're showing the same content everywhere. And it offers visual editing directly on your site. So if you have developers, they'll like it because content is kind of treated like code. They can use Git workflows to manage content changes, and they can customize and tweak things. And it's all version controlled because it's in a Git repository. Editors like it because they get this real-time editing interface. It's intuitive. They don't need to learn Git or Markdown or MDX. And they get this immediate preview of content changes. So that's really cool. If you took TinaCMS and those UI components and smush them together, you get a website like this. So this is Yak Shaver, which is an SSW product. It's pretty cool. You've got this text changing up here. I go down, I can see there's some animation that was happening here and highlighting and data changes. There's an accordion here jumping around. We've got a bento happening and there's some animations. Now this is not trivial work to make something this flash, but I happen to know that Josh and Isaac worked really hard on this, and they were using the Magic UI components that I put them onto, and they put this in TinaCMS and they've produced a really good looking site. So as far as the landing page goes, this is awesome. So it's a pretty cool product. You can, record your screen and just say, hey, I found a problem in this product. Here's some context. Then Yak Shaver translates that video and screen share, and it creates like an issue or a PBI, or even sends an email, puts it in the right backlog, and sends it to the right people. So that's really cool. So I check that out. I definitely check that out here. All right. We've been going along quite a lot of things. I think it's time to show you some of the cool things in a demo. Now, for the demo's sake, what I want to do is point you at the TinaCloud Starter template. Now, to pull that up, you go to Tina.io. There's an npx command here. I can just click on it, and I'll copy that to the keyboard. And I'll just pull up my console here, and I can just paste that. That's going to run the Create Tina app, and I can choose my package manager. If I had Bun, it would list Bun here. I select a project name, and then I choose a template of what I want to run with. What do I want to get started with? So I can just use this Next.js starter and fire it up. Now, I've already got it downloaded, so I'm just going to switch over to that so we don't have to download the internet. And it's here. And I've already got it running. You can see I'm using Next 15, and I'm using TurboPack as well. So I'll just go into the thing. It'll fire up in a second. Here we go. So similar to Yak Shaver, we've got a really nice landing page. There's a call out at the top. There's a little bit of animation when I hover over it. Just make that a bit bigger. There was animation that came in when this content loaded. We've got a video here. I can click on it and it opens up a YouTube video. I've got here's some stats on the product. Here's some features about the product. I've got a lot of blocks here that would be really useful on a landing page. So we've got some testimonials, and the Napoleon Dynamite AI says, gosh, it's pretty much the Liger of content management, majestic, powerful, and totally awesome. So that sounds totally legit. So, and there's a call to action and a nice subtle footer. So if you were, kicking off a business, you need a landing page, hopefully this is one that you could just, fire up the starter, customize to what you need. So if you want to customize it, you go to the /admin. That'll load up the admin editing interface, and you can customize it to what you want. So I was talking about the live editing capabilities. You can see all these blue boxes here. These are attributes that you add in to say, hey, where this component renders, this element is to do with this piece of content in the content management system. So I'll click on the title, and on the left, it loads up the form where I can change the headline. Now, if I want to add in a llama emoji into that title because it needs more llama, I can go open up my emoji picker, press the llama, and it just appears on the right-hand side. So I can customize this, and if I wanted to change the background color, there's a background color option. I can make it green or emerald, and the color just changes. So you've got some live editing capabilities here to edit as you need. So there's a lot of cool stuff here. I'd recommend checking out this template. And the other thing to check out while I'm covering it is the docs. So tina.io/docs, and then there's this learn tab. And Isaac on the team has spent a lot of time building out this beginner series, and it covers, getting started, what to do step by step, so you can get up and running and be a productive developer with TinaCMS. So I'm going to do something a little bit more advanced than the Learn series. And I was looking at the About page earlier, and I'll just load it up. And, it's pretty good. It tells you, hey, what this is, how to get up and running, and it points you at the learning guide that I was talking about before. But when I scrolled down here and I was looking at install, I could see there was this text about, this guide uses PNPM as a package manager, and the commands should work with everything else, but with minimal changes. So I think this PNPM install would be fine if I was using NPM. NPM install, yeah, that works. Yarn install, that works. PNPM run dev. I think yarn, I could just say yarn dev. So it could be different. So I'd love a way to show that depending on your package manager, you can run different commands. And I think when I was on that magic UI design and looking through the components, and when I was scrolling down, I saw that there was a script copy button. And this kind of looks like what I see on like the Microsoft Docs, where you may choose a different setting, and it gives you different things to run. So I can change, here's the PNPM command, I can click, it gives me a tick so I know it's copied, and then it's in my clipboard. So I'd love to integrate this into the product. So let's do it together. I'll go down and go to this installation command. I'll copy that, and we'll flick back into Visual Studio Code, and I'll just paste that command in the terminal. That's going to go grab a dependency and add some code into my project. So that's done. We'll look at the Git change log. In the packages, we can see it installed a couple of packages. So there's this Shiki package, and let's just double check what that is. So I'll just search for npm Shiki. There it is. And what does that do? It's a beautiful syntax highlighter based off TextMate grammars. Okay, so it does some syntax highlighting. That'll most probably work well because at the moment, this is just solid colors. So it would be nice to see some color differences between them. I think that's a nice user experience add-on as well. So that's cool that it's adding that. We also got a component here. So this is the script copy button component. And this is all the code that we need to run it. And there's a lot of it. So I could have most probably written this or gotten some help from AI, but I think it was a lot faster just to run that command. And it was exactly what I wanted. But we need to make some changes to this. Now, for this, I'm going to be, when we add this onto the page, it's going to be a JSX component that's going to be added in because we're storing it in an MDX file. And we're going to have to pass in the props in order for it to render. So I can see that show multiple package options is optional. There's a code language, which I assume is to do with what the script actually is, so like a shell script. There's a light theme and a dark theme. I happen to know that's for Shiki in terms of how it's meant to render the code out. And then there's this command map. Now, it wants to render an object with string keys and string values. I happen to know that that won't work in Tina, the way it stores the data. So I'm just going to change it to make it a little bit more editable. And we're just going to do it as a plain string. Now, the advantage of that is, what I'm planning on doing is we'll have, line delimited commands. So the different package managers will be on different lines. And then maybe we'll just pipe delimit it between the two. So it'll be a package manager, pipe. So npm pipe, npm install. So let's make some changes to the code just to make sure that works. So I'm just going to go, we'll need to parse it. So we'll need to go and work out what the commands are. And Copilot's got the right idea there. So we're going to split by new line and then map them. So we'll have an array that comes out. And then maybe if that doesn't exist, we'll just have an empty array. Now the package managers will want to go through the commands and map. We'll just call it a line. And that's going to be a line. And we want to split. But we want to split based off, I think, a pipe. Makes sense. That's cool. Package managers. So where was the next used? Command map is also used here. So the actual command that gets called. And I think we can vibe this in. Okay. So grab the commands and find the one where the line starts with the package manager that was chosen based off state, and then split it and grab the other side. And if that doesn't exist, I think we should just have a blank so there's at least something there. So I think that'll work. Now, the next thing that we'll do is we'll scroll down to the bottom and we'll add in a schema for this. So we want to structure this input so that when it gets saved, it's saved in a predictable way. So we'll need to export it. So we'll export a const, and this will be the script, a copy block schema. And let's strong type this. So I'm just going to say it's a template from TinaCMS. Now, I happen to know that it's not going to import the type. So I'll scroll back up to the top and I'll say import type. So we're importing a type from TinaCMS. So it'll be, this will be strong type, thankfully. Let's go down and it's a script copy block and it's got a label. Now we'll want to have, we'll want to customize the UI for this. So when you add this element to, when you add this component onto your document, we'll want to have some default data there. Okay. Now for this one, we'll have a code language, and that can be Bash, a light theme, a dark theme, and then a command map. I think that's pretty good. I just want to tweak this because it's not 100% what I want. I just want to make sure it's on different lines so I can just read it a bit more easily. Okay, so yarn, that should be install. So it's consistent, and then maybe we'll have a bun install as well. Okay, that looks pretty good. We've still got some red. It's missing some stuff, so let's continue on. We need to add some fields. So these are when you click on it, what fields are available. So these will be the properties here, and Copilot is vibing. So we've got a code language, and it's a little bit wrong, but that's okay. We don't want a component. We want to know what type it is. So it's a string. So we've got our code language, and it's given us a nice description, the language used for syntax highlighting. There's a light theme. There's a dark theme. And it was just a little bit wrong with this component. So you gotta double check your AI stuff. But it's a UI setting in there, so I'll move the component to text area. So we've got a few different fields here. We've got code language, we've got a light theme, we've got a dark theme, and this command map, and it's given a description, so we'll be able to see that in the UI. So I'll just save that, and we'll reload. Before we reload, we'll need to add this to our components. So I happen to know that it's a content component that we're adding it to. So I'm just going to search for the content component. And if I go down to the bottom here, we've got rich type. So this is this rich type text here, which is the content in the side. I want to be able to click on this and find an embed button to embed this script block. So I'll need to add this as a template. So I'll go into templates, and we'll just go script copy block schema. And that should do it. So let's add that in. I'll rerun the template, and we'll be able to start to add this to the page. So hopefully after this talk, I'll be raising a PR with a whole bunch of cool changes to this template. Let's just refresh this page. It's loading up. And it's just loading the data. There we go. Cool. So I'll go into the content, and I think partway down the page, it says pnpm install. I'm not such a fan of. What I'd like to do is delete that, because we won't need to say, hey, we're using pnpm. We'll have all the things available. And I'll delete the pnpm install, and I'll go to embed, insert a script copy block, and let's click on it. We can see it's bash. It's got the default values that we set before, and we've got a whole bunch of install commands there. So that's awesome. I'll click save. So the data, if we go back to VS Code, my about.mdx has been modified, which is good. So the data's in there, but it says no component provided for script copy block. So this is not a gotcha. This is just part of adding these components into it. It doesn't know how to render it. How does Tina know that this schema is to do with this component up here? Well, we need to wire the two together. So in the content block, we can have a look and see how it renders. It takes that body where we put the template, and it injects it into Tina Markdown. And then there's this components property here that says, hey, when you've got some components you don't know what to deal with, run it through here. So when you have a mermaid diagram, run this mermaid import. So what we want to do is add, as Copilot is suggesting, add any other components you want to render here. We want to add it in there. So let's just have a look at the about.mdx. And if I search in here for the script copy block, I can see there's an element here. And if I scroll along a little, we can see all the properties in there. There's the command map with everything. So I want to do it based off the element name. Cool. So we'll have a script copy block, and that's going to take in some props, and it's going to return a script copy button. And we'll just spread the props in and return that. So touch wood, this is going to work. We'll reload the page, scroll down, and there we go. I'm just going to load it outside of the admin interface so we can interact with it. So here we go. NPM, I can click on PNPM. I can click on the things. There's a little animation bouncing around. It looks really cool. If I click copy and paste, you can see it's in my clipboard, so it's working as expected. I wouldn't mind tweaking this a bit so it looks a bit better. So what I'll do is I can see this. It's not as wide as the screen. It's not generating in dark mode, and there's a bit of margins here. So I'm just going to go in back to the button, because we're changing it in one place, and it'll affect every usage of this. And let's go and look at the code. I can see there's some MX auto, so the margin and the X axis automatically center it. So there's got a max width being defined. You can see, so I've got some extensions here for Tailwind, and it's actually telling me what the class means under the hood. So we can actually ditch some of that, and we can say, hey, no pros, because I know that on this content, it's actually being defined as pros. So pros is the default for Tailwind, and saying, hey, apply some typography to it, some sane typography settings. So I'll change that, and I'll go width full as well. Let's see what that does. I'll flick back. Okay, now it's full width. It's looking a bit better. I can see that there's some syntax highlighting. It's very light. Who likes the dark mode more? Yeah, 2/3 of the audience. So what we can do is we'll go to the admin mode and we'll just change it there. So we'll go back to the about page. Let's go to the content, scroll down and find that component. There it is, script copy block. I'll click on that and we'll just say dark. Let's scroll down and now it's dark. I'll hit save. Awesome. So if we go back here to about, let's just read. Should I click save? I must have missed something. There's a couple of issues here. So Next is reminding me there's a couple of issues. I can click on that and we can see hydration failed because there were some changes. Okay, so between those two things, so the server rendered it as this and then it switched over. So there's some caching going on there that needs to be, fixed up. If I click on the N for Next, I can see, there was issues, TurboPack was enabled, and I can see down here that the route is static. So this is a statically generated page, which is cool. I've also added to this template, if you can see in the bottom corner, it says XL. So this is when you're dealing with Tailwind, this is going to be extra large. And if you zoom in, it becomes large, medium, small, extra small. So depending on the container size, it makes it a lot easier to debug, your responsiveness. That only gets rendered in dev mode, so I think that's pretty cool. Now that I've zoomed right out, it's 2XL, so I'll just go back to XL. All right, so there's some CSS things. We could spend some time and fix it up, but I think you get the gist of it. What else did I talk about in the Next.js part that could be important here? So I talked about on the app router, there's some conventions that get followed. So let me just make everything bigger. So we've got here. So let me do this. Okay, so we've got our app router. We've got this page.tsx. So that's the equivalent of like your default.aspx or index.html. When you go to something inside that route, that is the page that will get loaded. If you have directories underneath there, so we've got posts, /posts, and there's be a page.tsx in there, and that'll what will be loaded if you call /posts. You've got this other directory here, which square brackets, ... URL segments. Any guesses for what this does?
Catch all.
Catch all, yes. So it's going to say, hey, there's most probably going to be a whole bunch of URL segments in here. Let's do it as an array. So I've got the spread. So it says, hey, it's an array. I'm going to call this array URL segments. So these are params. So if I go into the URL segments page.tsx, we can see here that the component for page has params, and that params is a promise. Because next 15, these are async, so it's a promise. And URL segments are here because it's defined by convention based off the directory name. And it's a string array. So whatever's in that URL will be part of this. Now, from there, we go and take the URL segments. We'll join them together with slashes, so it kind of looks like our file system. And then we'll call TinaCMS. And we'll call TinaCMS with our generated client. So this client up here comes from Tina generated. It gets committed with when you make changes to your schema. There's a query in there, get me a page, and this is the page I want to get. So based off the file path, I want to grab an MDX file. That returns as data. We take that data, render out the page. So now you're an expert on how to return data from TinaCMS and render out pages. This URL segments, since it's a catch-all, it'll grab anything that's not posts. So the posts will run in here, and then underneath posts, there's URL segments in there, so it'll do something similar. So look, hopefully you've learned a bit about Next.js, Tailwind, and TinaCMS with this demo. From here, once you make some customizations, the next steps are deploying it to the cloud. And it's a Next.js app, so you can deploy it to pretty much anywhere. You can deploy it as a static site onto some static storage. You can deploy it onto Vercel or Azure Static Web Apps. There's a whole bunch of options there. All right. So there we go. So what have we done? We've covered Next.js and what's new with Next 15. So you're up to speed on all the big ticket things. There's a whole bunch more in Next 15 that I didn't cover, but it's already been an hour, so I don't want to spend the next day covering Next 15. It's huge. Tailwind 4, we've covered all the big things. Again, look into that. The Tailwind have a really cool YouTube channel where they're covering off a lot of the new developments, so I'd subscribe to that. UI components, there's a whole bunch out there. So if you want to, it's great to fire up AI and things like Copilot and V0 and try and build out what you want, but maybe it already exists. And so I'd hunt around there first, and you can most probably get some ideas, worst case. So if it exists, awesome, you'll get some ideas. You can build some awesome interactions and really have some really cool looking applications. We covered TinaCMS, so if you need to add some content, manage some content, that's going to be my recommended go-to. And this demo is going to be on YouTube, so you can always refer back to it. If you want to get up to speed quickly, check out tina.io/docs. Click on that Learn tab and take advantage of all of Isaac's hard work there in terms of getting up to speed with Tina. This has been Matt Wicks from SSW. Thank you for watching.